Hello there. Nice to have you with me again today. Dr. Teach Me to Parent. So, get your coffee out, get a cup of coffee, and settle down, and we've got a great program for you today. We have a guest, Dr. Deborah Hanessian, a local psychologist, who's going to join me in a little bit. And the topic today is a very, very important one to probably not all of us, but many of us, if not most of us. And that is, how do you bond with a child after birth? You have the pregnancy, we have the birth, and then we have that bonding time. And how do you do that? And what happens if you don't bond? What happens to a child that doesn't bond with a parent and doesn't create that real sense of identity and closeness? That's the tough one. So we're going to take a look at that today together, and so feel free to get your coffee now and join us in a few minutes. Now, I refer you again to my book. Our topic today comes from the book, and Dr. Teach Me to Parent. Make sure you pick it up at Barnes & Noble or Amazon, or just contact me at my website, booksbyhedberg.com. Booksbyhedberg.com, and you can get the book there as well. So make sure you get your copy of it so you can follow along with me from week to week. So now let me put this kind of program in a little bit of perspective today, and so you kind of know where we're going, and I do this each time, and I have this little quote that I want to give you as a way to kind of get your mind set on our topic today. It says this: to succeed as a parent, you must consider your child's behavior as a warning flag that requires you to take action. Now, if you just think in terms of that, is that we live with our children, we live around our children, and we just take them for granted much of the time. But what that is saying to us is that watch the child's behavior pattern. Look for changes. Look for anything that is concerning you or would be a worry for you, or something that just catches your attention. It's a flag. It's a warning flag. Now, hopefully it will turn into good, but it may not. But you need, as a parent, to take action. You need to make sure that you address whatever the concern is that you notice in the behavior patterns of your children. So it's the child's behavior pattern that you watch, and that's the red flag. But what's important to us as a parent is that we take action, and we respond to these kids when they have some kind of a concern or some kind of an issue in their life, and that's certainly one that concerns you as a parent. Okay, so that's the context in which we're going to talk today in terms of what the behavior patterns of children, they're warning signs, they're red flags to us, and what we do as a parent to make sure that we respond to these kids in a constructive and a healthy and a very positive kind of way. Now, our topic today: kids that do not bond, kids that do not connect with the birth mother and the parents. They just don't connect for some reason. There's something wrong. There's something that interferes. There's something that just gets in the way. And we're going to take a look at that, what those might be. So get the idea of bonding as two people coming together and forming a fellowship, so to speak. Two people coming together and forming a companionship. Two people coming together and forming a close connection. And the opposite of that, of course, is that they have a child and a parent is a disconnect. They just don't touch each other. They don't come together. They don't integrate. They just kind of almost live separate lives as if they were parallel lives for each other. And that's not good. That's not what we want. We want homes. We want children born into homes and with parents that come together in a connecting kind of way. And we have to kind of remember that that connection takes place in the first 3 years of life. It's going to be the critical period of time, the first 3 years of life. So let's take a very short break, and we're going to come back, and Dr. Deborah Hanessian is going to join me as we talk about this topic of putting together the birth mother and the child in a connecting kind of manner. Okay? See you in just a few seconds.
Green Gables Care Home is a 24-hour assisted living facility for the elderly, located in Clovis, California, offering spacious private and semi-private rooms which are wheelchair-approved, catering to the special person in your life who needs attention and wants to live in a loving home environment. The Green Gables Care Home has assisted living and secured homes for elderly persons with Alzheimer's, memory loss, and for your loved ones needing assistance with their activities of daily living. Call 559-307-0950 and visit greengablescarehome.com.
Sometimes good intentions hurt rather than help. For just $1.76 per meal, the Fresno Rescue Mission offers more than food. We offer hope. Please donate today.
Do you need a locksmith? Layman's Lock and Safe Service and Repair is available for you. 559-228-1805.
Gained a lot, learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. So there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010 and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Choosing a Medicare plan can be difficult and frustrating. Susan Hatch can guide you through the Medicare maze and help find the right plan for you. Susan helps people understand the confusing and drastic changes that occur every year in Medicare. Susan will only recommend plans that will protect your assets and allow you to continue to see your personal doctor. As a 100% independent agent, Susan is not controlled by any particular insurance company to steer a person onto any one particular plan. Susan was awarded the #1 Medicare supplement agent in California. Look for Susan's Medicare question and answers every Monday in the Fresno Bee. Call Susan at 559-307-2287 and visit MedicareToday.net.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, thanks for coming back and joining us as we now pick up our topic that I introduced just a little while ago. And if you weren't with us, make sure you have coffee now. You're going to have a little cup of coffee as we go for our next segment. Now, introduce this kind of an issue that once a child is born, the child needs to connect and bond with the natural parent, with the mother, preferably. And some kids do. Some kids don't. Some kids do and have a certain outcome. The kids that don't bond have a different kind of an outcome in their life and live a different lifestyle altogether. So it's a huge factor in the life of a child as to whether that child bonds with the mother upon birth and for the next 3 years thereafter. So Dr. Deborah Honessian is with me, local psychologist, and we're going to talk about this topic just a little bit and kind of put it into perspective, for you. So sit tight and take a listen, okay? Bonding, Dr. Honessian, bonding. What is it?
Well, in this case, it's related to the initial attachment to some strong and healthy figure we're talking about. Oftentimes we talk about the mother figure, but we're talking about a kind of mother figure. It doesn't have to be mom. And oftentimes it's not mom. It could be a father, it could be grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, could be anybody who's consistent in their life, provides structure, safety, and love to them.
A male, female.
Could be a male or female.
He doesn't.
Yeah, as you said, most generally it's a mom.
Sure.
It's a
I mean, it's
female
natural, yeah.
figure, but it doesn't have to be. And oftentimes children don't have that privilege of it being the mother. So it's somebody who provides that for them.
Now, I mentioned that there's a window of time.
Yes.
Of that 36 months or that 3 years after birth. So we have the pregnancy, we have the delivery, and I mean, that's a bonding time. Mothers bond with the child during those 9 months of pregnancy.
It's supposed to
Mothers
be.
bond with the child on birth, and the child bonds with the mother at birth.
Right.
But it's that next 3 years.
Yes.
That's a critical time. Is it really kind of
Critical
3
time.
years, or is it?
Well, when you think about the first 3 years, you're so, I mean, a child, what is a child? Is totally dependent on something or someone. By 3, you're walking, you're talking, you're making decisions, so on. So after that, you're much more independent. But when you're quite dependent, you have to have somebody like, at least one person like that in your life to provide for you. And that's why the psychologists say the first 3 years, and including, by the way, before you're born. Even before you're born, there's questions about if the mother nurtures and cares for that child, even though it's still in her.
Yeah, we always think that that's the mother's time to bond with the child.
It is, yeah.
But there's been some research so that even the fetus, even the child, bonds with the mother during the pregnancy.
Right.
I mean, there's a kind of a connection there, and but the next 3 years, I mean, that's pretty critical. Then, lots of things happen in 3 years in the life of a family. The mother, the family, the marriage. Lots of things happen in that 3 year period of time, but we would like it to be pretty consistent. We'd like it to be for the child to be have that consistent.
Right, and talking about that first 3 years, where that child is in the family, is the child valued? Is it loved? Is it spoken to? Is it taken care of? Or is it just an addendum to them or something to, like, now what do we do with this?
Got kind of stuck with this kid or something like that.
stuck with the kid, one more responsibility. So how that child is valued and nurtured in those first 3 years are so critical to that child's welfare. And it is a blueprint to how he or she's going to operate in life.
And relate to other people, I assume. I mean, that's their
as an
social.
Adult. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That
really,
is the blueprint.
that
Right, in that
3 year
critical time.
period of time, that 36 months, we don't hear much about that. I mean, that's not something that you.
It's kind of a given, isn't it?
Well,
just
I guess we
think,
assume it
well,
to be true.
We assume it to be true, but
Yeah.
the research says that's the critical time for bonding.
So
for
if parents are going to have a child, they really have to commit not to the pregnancy or to the birth. They got to commit to a 3 year period of time.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
think about these families that give birth to a child, and then they divorce.
Yeah.
I mean, boom, you know, or separate, or they go through some kind of a problem and they separate, and then the child is left with the father, or the child is left with the mother, or the child kind of goes back and forth during that 3 year period of time. Just that first 3 years, that's got to be a time of irresponsibility, maybe. Seems
Yeah,
to me that a
that's
parent
where-
needs to commit to 3 years.
Right. You know what? That's a very good point, because we think of the people that are talking, the mom and dad, and the dad will say, well, I want the child 50% of the time. There's nothing wrong with me, and so maybe the courts allow that.
Yeah.
But nobody's really thinking, or they need to think of, the child and what the child needs. And
Well-
actually, in truth, the courts do think a lot of what the child needs. And that child really needs one consistent person in their life to take care of them, to check on their needs, to love them, to hold them, nurture them.
We call it the primary parent.
The primary
I guess
parent,
it's kind of
right.
and that
there
could be a
needs
father.
to be that, and there needs to be that.
Yeah.
There absolutely needs to be that. It doesn't need to be kind of shifted around from grandma to grandpa to mom, dad, auntie. It needs to be one.
You know, I've seen this in the courts too, where you kind of feel like the child should have equal time with the mother and with
Right.
the father, and it seems to me the argument during the first 3 years of life is that really who's going to be the primary parent has to be decided, and that primary parent gets the primary time.
Yes.
Gets the most time
Right.
for that bonding.
Right.
Now, sure, a child can have experiences with the other parent, but making it equal means the child doesn't have a bond with either of them,
That's
perhaps.
correct.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's too complex to bond with
Right.
2 people or 3
Right.
people. And then you have siblings and you have grandparents and you have babysitters
Right.
and you have daycare and
Yeah, and when are you going to see that child, the parent again? You know, you don't know. Children don't know time. They don't know how long time is.
we make it tough for kids to grow up.
Yeah.
But what happens to these kids? You know, if you have a child that does not bond, let's just take the child that does not bond with a parent at birth, it doesn't bond after birth for these first 3 years of life, they're kind of an orphan in a way, an emotional orphan.
Yeah.
They just don't bond. They're being taken care of. They're in a home. They're given food. They're given shelter. They're given clothes. They're you know, mother's working, dad's working, kids are in school, siblings are in school. Kids farmed out to somebody else to take care of them during the day. They really don't bond. What happens to these kids? What's the result of these kids? Is this are these kids just normal kids like anybody else, or are they different, unique in some way?
Well, if you think about it, if that's the case, to me, the number one thing they would be feeling is a lack of trust. Who do you trust? Because are they going to be there or are they not going to be there? And who are they? And I mean, they're maybe unfamiliar. You don't know them at a deeper level. So trust is a primary contributor or lack of trust to problems in their life.
So a child does not trust the mother to be there, and doesn't trust a primary parent to show up or to be there on a consistent time. That child then is anxious.
And by the way,
Nervous.
it's not so much about what somebody says, I'll be there. It's the action. Are they there? Are they there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's their promise keeping kind of a thing.
Promise keeping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that would cause anxiety. That would cause anger, easily anger, because why aren't they there?
Yeah.
And what's wrong with me that they can't be there? Or what's wrong with them? And so then whoever is the primary parent or the most primary parent gets their wrath and their anger.
What about affection? It seems to me that a child learns to receive affection and then to give affection during the first 3 years as well. But if a child isn't bonded, do they ever learn to be affectionate to peers and eventually in a marriage and a family life themselves?
Yeah, you know what you're talking about is, as I said, this is a blueprint for life.
Yeah.
And so in the blueprint for life, they're going to be isolated. They're going to have a lonely life. And part of that, they're going to say, it's not my fault that I have a lonely life. But they're going to have a lonely life. So they don't know how to give and receive affection because they didn't get it so much, or they didn't get their needs met as a child. And so as a child, which is so hard to do when these children already are showing problems of attachment, it's very important to hold and nurture them and cuddle them and talk to them when they're trying to push you away. But the very thing they need is to be held and cuddled and loved.
Yeah. And that's how you learn to receive affection. Seems to me that's your first lesson.
Yeah, that's how you learn to receive it.
You got to learn to receive it before you can learn
Before
to
you can give
be
it.
affectionate to somebody else.
Right.
But that's the interchange between a parent and a child.
Yes.
Is that giving and receiving affection. So it's essential. But what about things like conscience? Knowing right from wrong and knowing when to do this or when to do that and when not to do something.
Well, that doesn't develop so well because your basic needs aren't met. So if your basic needs aren't met, you can't think about the rights and responsibilities to other people. Your brain just doesn't think that way. Mm-hmm. It can't. It's higher level of thinking.
So really, a child that doesn't bond is probably at risk relative to
high risk.
The sense of consciousness.
High risk. And high risk. And we see this all the time on the news or in the papers about someone who's a serial killer or something, those kinds of things. The Jeffrey Dahmers of this world, they'll go back. And I mean, some psychologists will go back and say, well, he had a rough life. And so he did. That's true. Yeah. There's no denying it. Yeah. There's no denying that. Because why? They never really had that basic needs met at 0 to 3.
And so they really don't develop a conscience.
They don't.
I mean, maybe a little bit. but not to a full extent. You know, of really knowing the right and wrong and knowing the feeling of sensitivity for other people and how you affect other people.
That's correct.
Empathy, if you will.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It can be developed, though.
Well,
it can be
learn.
developed.
You have to learn it.
You have to learn
it. Then that requires a very specific process of learning.
It requires a very specific process, and it requires a strong parental role, strong, consistent parental role that can't see that their actions as personal to them. It's not personal to them. It's, as you were saying, it's more about the child than it is the parental role. As you were saying earlier, you were saying, look at your children and look at their behavior, and that's telling you a lot about their behavior. It's not telling anything about the parent necessarily. You can't take that personally. You can't take it personally because you really have to help that child.
Yeah. You know, one other thing, and we'll take a break here, but one other thing is that these kids that don't bond, it just seems to me that they would then have trouble allowing somebody to control their life, allowing somebody to parent them, basically. I mean, that's what control is. It's being a parent to them, helping them make decisions, making decisions for them. You certainly do that as a young child. No 3-year-old runs a house.
Right.
So do they learn that?
You know,
is that at risk?
The whole thing boils down to this: control and power. So there's going to be a control issue here with these children, and who's in power? And the parent has to be in power. The child cannot be.
So
in
that's
power.
going to be a problem in a home for parents.
Oh,
it's going to be a problem in a marriage later on. It's going to be a problem in employment.
It is.
You know, later on, where you have a boss, you have a supervisor, you have a manager.
Oh, these people have a very hard time with it.
They have a hard time, I gather. So they have employment problems.
Yeah. So they leave their job, or the employer tries to work with it, and it just doesn't work for them. And of course, they can't take responsibility for that. It's not their problem, because if they took responsibility, then they could work with it and change.
That's right. Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll take a break here at this moment and get a cup of coffee. Join us. We're going to pick up this discussion on these kids that do not bond with the natural primary parent. So we'll see you in just a little bit.
A dentist who has a passion for superior aesthetics and comfort, you need Dr. Christopher Wong with Cedar North Dental. Call 559-432-4948 or visit cedarnorthdental.com. Fresno Rescue Mission's Rescue the Children program is a protected, secure environment providing emergency and long-term services to women at risk, abused, homeless, previously incarcerated, and women with children. The community provides women and their children a place to get away from destructive lifestyles, offering a place to heal, learn, and grow. Give to the Fresno Rescue Mission today.
Opportunity isn't always given a door to knock on, so we built one. The door to our kids' futures is often crowded by temptation and misdirection, making it difficult for them to reach their full potential. But once they enter that door, our club door, inside is a place of hope and opportunity. The second home for the nearly 4 million kids we serve every year after school and in the summer. Inside our doors, youth development professionals and mentors provide the guidance, support, and encouragement needed for every kid and teen in an enriching and safe environment, no matter their circumstances. Boys and Girls Club set the standard as the #1 advocate for youth during the out-of-school time. We assure success is within reach for all kids and teens in America, with club members on track to graduate from high school with a plan for the future, demonstrating good character, and living a healthy lifestyle. We're leading America's youth, fostering success well beyond the basketball court through hundreds of programs, from robotics to the culinary arts, providing unlimited opportunities for those seeking. This hope and opportunity builds character, creates leaders, and helps all kids define their future. Ensuring young people find their passions, reach for their dreams, and achieve their full potential. Much can be found inside our 4,000 doors nationwide and on military installations around the world. Boys and Girls Clubs is the opportunity for all kids, and our doors are open. Great futures start here.
Satellite television transforming the Middle East through hope in Jesus Christ. Sat7USA.org.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, thanks for coming back and joining us. Hope you have your second cup of coffee now, and join us as we pick up our discussion on these children that are born to parents and do not bond. The parent doesn't bond with the child, and the child doesn't bond with the parent, the primary parent, whether that be the mother or the father or grandparent or whomever that might be. And we've been talking now regarding who are these kids, and what are they like, and what kind of happens to them, and what are some of the characteristics of children who just do not bond, and they're at risk. They're at risk in life, and they're at risk through a marriage. They're at risk for employment. They're at risk for their educational future, and so on. So it's a tough situation for a child that is not well received and well accepted and well integrated into a family or into a marriage or into the life of the primary parent or the mother. Dr. Deborah Honessian is with us, and she's the expert on our topic today and going to kind of pontificate a little bit and educate us on this issue of these kids and why they're that way. Why does a child not bond with a mother? I mean, you think that the mother gives birth and that mother would just bond with that kid naturally, and it just, all of a sudden, it would just kind of take place. But it doesn't. There are things that interfere. There are things that break that bond or don't allow that bond to be formed.
Right.
What are they? What takes place?
Well, first of all, we're talking about a specific situation with a child called attachment disorder. And most people don't have this disorder, thank God.
Well, that's
they
right.
don't, because most people do grow up, we like to think that children are wanted. When they find out a mother's pregnant, they're excited about it, they're thinking about it, valuing the child, trying to decide if it's a boy or girl, already setting up for all that. And then when they come into this world, everybody's excited about it. That is a very blessed child. Actually, in truth, that's the way we were all supposed to grow up. And it is such a blessing. And if there's enough money there so that the mother doesn't have to work and mother doesn't want to work, that's even more of a blessing. Mm-hmm. She could stay home, or someone is consistent. Doesn't have to be mom has to be home, but even a very consistent, loving child care person, that's a real blessing too. But not everybody has that blessing. And just to give you an example, oftentimes children that are adopted, the mother knows they're not going to keep that baby. So what happens to the mother? That's very stressful to know you're carrying a baby and you're not going to keep it. So a lot of those stress hormones go throughout the mother's body right to the child's body, and when that child comes out, he already has a lot of stress hormones within him, and already is an anxious child. So what do we have? We might have a child that's a colicky child or pushes you away right off. Now, let's even go with that, the adopted child. So some well-meaning parent has this child, and the child is colicky or pushing you away. They're not wanting to bond in love with you. And the mother thinks, what happened to me? I want this child. But it's the child that was just born that way. And it's very unfair to the child, very unfair to the parents. And so even if that child has parents that are loving, caring, and in an adoptive family that loves and cares for them, right off the bat, they may say, what's wrong with this child? They're pushing me away. They don't want this. And then the mother or the family thinks there's just something wrong with this kid, and we don't know what it is. Maybe it was the birth mom. And that's what happened.
And there's a difference between the child that is born into a family and not particularly wanted, maybe tolerated or accepted. That's different from the child that's born into a family that's rejected. We don't want that child. We never wanted that child. We're stuck with that child.
Yeah.
I mean, the rejection versus just not feeling comfortable to accept.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big factor. What about the abused kid? I mean, does abuse prevent the bonding?
Oh, yes.
If a child is abused, first 3 years of life, we're talking about that period of time.
Yeah, if abuse is a way to parent a child, my gosh, what do they learn? They learn to be abusive too.
Yeah.
And they learn that whatever they do wrong, and they're rejected. So they're rejected from mom and dad, or whoever is in the family, and so they're rejected in society. Those children don't have much of a chance at all at school because they'll automatically think this isn't going to work for me. They don't like me. People don't like me. The teachers won't like me. People in authority won't like me. And so they can only take so much of that. They'll either withdraw, be very withdrawing, or they'll act out, be angry, and abusive to other people.
But I mean, abuse really kind of communicates to the kid that they're not valued. They're not particularly honored.
No, they're not.
I mean, this is not a prize.
No.
That you really take care of.
No.
I mean, it's all kinds of messages with that. And I think parents often abuse children out of accident, so to speak. They don't mean to be abusive.
Well,
they're just harsh.
And some people aren't ready to be parents.
Well, that's also true.
Some people are not prepared to be a parent. So if they become a parent, they become a very poor parent. They may want to be a good parent, but they don't know how themselves.
I'm thinking of these young gals in high school. You have a child giving birth to a child, basically.
Absolutely.
And, what high school girl giving birth to a child is going to say, okay, I'm going to now take 3 years of my life and give to this child. Not going to go to school, not going to go out with my friends. I'm not going to develop my life as a teenager. I'm going to devote my life to this child for 3 years. What kid does that? They don't do that.
They don't do that.
So here we have a child then born into a life.
They may want to do that.
Well, maybe,
they may think they're going to do that, but really their brain isn't developed enough to be able to do that consistently.
No, brain isn't developed till you're 21, 25, so it's going to happen. No. Yeah. But I always think of these poor little kids that are born to a teenage mother. I mean,
right.
I'm sure they mean well. I'm sure they want to be a
Absolutely.
good parent.
I think that too. We like
how
to
can
think the
you
best of them. You can't. You can't.
So these kids are more likely to be.
So let's go with that. So let's say a teenager, and at best her parents want her to finish high school.
Sure.
So she tries to finish high school. What happens to that baby?
Yeah.
Who takes care of that baby? The baby kind of gets passed around. Maybe the grandma could take care of him, maybe child care, it's like a little bit of a volleyball. You just kind of pass it around.
There's no bonding.
There's no bonding.
No bonding with that.
It's real not fair to the child if they really think of that, it's not fair to the child.
How can we use that as a way to prevent teenage pregnancies? Teenage pregnancies are
rampant, I know.
Rampant and inappropriate.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, it's a setup for failure.
Yeah. You know, there's another kind of a event that happens in the life of a parent, and I'll just call it separation. You know, sometimes a mother is ill and she has to go to the hospital and for a prolonged period of time.
Yes.
You know, sometimes a child becomes
Or
ill
the
and has to be in
child,
a hospital for a long period of time.
Right.
And, you know, obviously you have the divorce, the separations that happen even right after marriage, right after the birth of a child.
Right.
You know, and they didn't bargain for this, but...
And sometimes people are having problems and they think a child's going to help the marriage, which is exact opposite of what they should be doing. So then that just encumbers the relationship even more.
So these kids that are left alone from this kind of separation, and then are at risk. I gather they just don't.
Right.
Nobody takes care of them. I mean, they're taken care of in some kind of a general way, but not,
their
not
real deep nurturing needs aren't consistently, and that's the problem. The consistency, consistently taken care of. They're not.
What about if this child is then put into a kind of a daycare? You know, kind of a home or a institution of some kind, a class, a school, where they're cared for all day long. Mother's working. That's 8 hours. That's 10 hours time they drop off, pick them up. That's 10 hours a day. That child could be in a daycare home.
Yes.
What about that
Well,
kid?
you know, it kind of, in one sense, depends on the child. Now, if the child came from a home that, as a wanted child, loved child, there was some bonding there, and then mom decides to go back to work, let's say. So they come from that, and they go into loving daycare in some way, and with a consistent daycare worker for years. That could be okay. That could be okay. But if they didn't come from that, and if they were passed around a little bit before they went to daycare, and daycare changes their daycare workers, well, that's just a setup for a mess.
Yeah.
You know, they never really make those bonds with the daycare worker or the mom or dad or whoever else is
So
involved.
it kind of comes down to kind of the consistency. You have 3 years, and if you can put a child in a box for 3 years and keep that child's life pretty consistent with the primary parent, whatever daycare provider, whatever extended family members and so on, and those are pretty consistent,
that can work.
that works.
Yeah.
That's what we would hope for a child.
That works, and that's actually like life. Then you start school, you have a teacher for 9 months, that ends. Another teacher for 9 months, that ends. So then they kind of see those things happen. People can come and go in our life, and I'm okay. Yeah. As long as there's some consistent people in their life called their family.
And that's where you learn to trust. Because they're going to be there consistently.
Trust builds. And trust is key.
Yeah.
Trust is key. And that is the key. If there's no trust, then they have to worry about their safety. Yeah. They have to worry about control. They have all those kinds of things that they try to take control of, their own control.
What about the child that's raised in a home where they move a lot?
Like military?
Military would be a good example of that. But where the father has to move or the mother has to, relocate because of jobs or because of safe living, whatever that might be. But but there's, so the surrounding of a child is different and varies and changes, even though the parents may be the same. Is that, does a child kind of bond also with the environment? Is that associated with the actual parenting quality of the parent?
Well, what really matters is what goes on in that home. That's the primary, whatever goes on in that home. If somehow they got the message, we are family, we stick together, we watch out for each other, we take care of each other's needs in healthy ways, then the outside isn't as important. But if you don't have that on the inside and you have the outside, there's just no consistency anywhere, and it doesn't matter.
Seems to me, though, that when a child is abused in a particular environment, the child not only feels the abuse, but that environment becomes kind of an associated place of abuse. So it's like a trigger. So when the child is in that environment, the child would get more nervous, get anxious, because I might be abused again.
Oh, right.
But it's the same thing in the other way. If a child is loved in a home, that environment becomes kind of a loving, safe environment.
Right, right. Because let's say again, trust. If you can't trust at home, then when you walk out that door, you're not going to trust those people. They're going to be the enemy. And so it's me or them. But if there's trust at home, it's like, oh, these are new people. And I'm not saying they're going to like all the time with new people, but they're going to be okay people.
So these kids that are just not cared for in a loving, soft, empathetic, compassionate manner are really tremendously at risk for the rest of their life.
At risk for the rest of their life, right.
Wow.
They are.
That's profound.
It is.
But can a parent...
It is a blueprint for life.
That's the point I hear.
It is.
And a parent has some chance of redeeming the child. Maybe the chance have some learning some of the skills and some of the patterns of life that they missed. But there's going to be a hole. There's going to be a hole there.
Look at this. There's Jeffrey Dahmers in this world, and every once in a while there's a Helen Keller. Helen Keller had everything going against her.
Yeah. But she rose.
She rose above it, right? And contributed to our society. So there's hope. It's just a lot of work.
Well, I think that's what a parent really has to commit to.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And
it's a lot of work.
And what you're saying and what the research is saying is that work is primarily in the first 3 years. You can't overlook that. You can't downplay that. You can't just kind of say, well, I'll do the best I can and I'll catch it later. I'll be a better parent later.
Right. You can't. But you know what? You got to believe that it's never too late. You have to live in hope, and you have to just know that deep inside is a child that wants to be loving and caring and cared for and interactive.
Yeah.
Even though the outside doesn't look anything like that.
Well, anyway, thanks for joining us on this little segment. We're going to take a short break and come back for the next segment. And we're going to talk about the kids that thrive, the kids that kind of rise above it and thrive, just as Dr. Onesian was just mentioning. There are kids who thrive even under the worst of circumstances or the least of circumstances. And we're going to take a look at the thrivers and what helps kids thrive and what you as a parent can do, what the church can do, what our government can do, what our agencies in our community can do. How do you help kids thrive that maybe otherwise would have difficulty thriving? But who are the thrivers? So join us in a couple minutes, take a look at our sponsors, and get a cup of coffee and come on back in just a couple minutes, okay?
Hey there, world! I'd like to introduce you to someone really special and really cool. This is my mom. My mom is an amazing person. She is a writer. She is a newly transplanted Texan. She is a woman of faith and she loves 80s music. She also is a person with a very rare genetic muscular disorder called Pompe disease.
Pompe disease is a terminal, progressive illness. It's a genetic enzyme deficiency which ultimately leads to the destruction of your skeletal muscles. Those are the muscles that control how you move, your arms, your legs, and your torso. When your jaw or esophageal muscles are affected, you can no longer eat and require a feeding tube. When your diaphragm is impacted, you can't breathe on your own any longer and require a trach ventilator. When your legs are impacted, you will no longer be able to walk without assistance. You can lose bladder and bowel control. It affects children and adults, and eventually it kills you. It is rare, but it's real.
Now we're lucky. My mom's still able to walk, though she uses a cane to get around most of the time. She's still able to breathe unassisted, but she can't go upstairs, and she needs some kind of assistance to get up from a seated position, like if she's sitting in a chair. She has to examine every activity ahead of time to know if there are things like handicap parking, accessible buildings, and even functional bathrooms. All of her activities depend heavily on the weather. A windy day can be just as dangerous as an icy one. She jokes that you can tell what kind of day she's having by whether she can lift her arms high enough to do her hair. And she recently moved into a one-story house specifically with the idea that she's one day going to need a wheelchair to get around. Those are the kind of things she has as everyday concerns. Her normal everyday fears are things like dropping her keys or falling in public and not being able to get up. That actually happened a couple of years ago. She fell and fractured her pelvis because she was unable to break her fall.
I receive an enzyme replacement therapy every 2 weeks for life. It's a 6-hour IV. It helps slow the progression of the disease, but it is not a cure. And it costs about $100,000 every time you sit in the chair. Insurance takes care of most of that if you're lucky, but not everyone is, and the expenses add up very quickly. Things like wheelchairs, accessible vehicles, special housing, travel costs to medical conferences, doctor's appointments, and clinical trials. Luckily, there is a group that helps families with Pompe handle these costs. The United Pompe Foundation is a group connecting funds with real people who need help. This was founded by a father whose son has Pompe disease, and they could not find the resources that they needed. They assist patients and their families with medical costs and other expenses that they need to survive day to day. Every little bit helps.
There are a lot of things in life that we really take for granted, and sometimes the scariest things in the world are the things that you can't see. So today we're asking for you to help us shed a little light on a rare and scary disease. Please share this video with your friends, your family, strangers, anybody that you come across. Education is a big thing. It makes a big difference. And another way to make a really huge difference in someone's life is to go check out the United Pompe Foundation. Their website is in this video description. Click on it, check it out, and go ahead and donate some money if you're able to. Again, this is an organization giving real help to real people who are amazing and need it, like my mom. I love her, and thank you so much for helping us out. Thank you so much.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, thanks for coming on back in our last segment. As today we talk about these kids that are born but do not bond with the birth mother or the birth parent or the birth primary parent and are at risk as a result of this lack of bonding and the lack of connection that should happen and really must happen. But in some kids it doesn't happen, and these kids are at risk, and we've been looking at some of the effects of that upon a child and the implications of that lack of bonding for the child's life from there on. So here we are, now coming to our last segment and saying, let's flip this thing around a bit. There are kids who thrive. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of kids who thrive. There are a lot of kids who are at risk when they were born, but somehow or other things turn around for them and they do thrive. And they make it, and they become very successful, and they become very satisfied kids, and very respectable kind of kids, and kids that you honor and please with, and so on. So they're thrivers. So what turns this thing around? What helps a kid become a thriver? Who are the thrivers?
So this is for turnaround kids that
a lot of them
high risk kids.
And then now they turn around and become a thriver. What?
At some level, at some unconscious level, a kid has to know that they are, as the Bible says, fearfully and wonderfully made. They're good. They're good. They're a good soul. They're a good soul. A lot of stuff has happened to them, but deep down, they are a valuable person. They have to understand that. And how they understand that is the primary parent, whether it's an adoptive parent or grandma, auntie, whatever, has to treat them as such. Their behavior may be terrible, but deep down inside, they're a good person. And they have to buy that at some level. Mm-hmm. They have to know they have something of value to contribute to society. So they have to know that, and parenting has to treat them that way and not not get derailed by their actions, but to keep focused on that they're a good person and they have things to do and accomplish in life.
We call it self-esteem in a way. We want parents to help the child esteem themselves.
That's right.
But also see that other people value them too.
Well, first it comes from outside and then it comes from inside.
Yeah.
They have to get that. And so you asked in the last segment, what can the church do? What can the parents do? Not sure what the government can do, but so that has to be consistent. They have to have a community of consistent believers in them, and then that's for them to believe in themselves. Is for them to start to thrive. And to start to thrive, at home you have some chores to do, you have your homework to get done, you have family time together, you do things with family, you start to involve yourself with family. Children that don't thrive isolate themselves and live an isolated life. Yeah. So it's very important to get them involved in the family.
Yeah. Get them out of the room. Get them out
of the room. Yeah. Now they do need, by the way, they do need a safe room, depending on how bad they've been abused. If they've been abused badly, they need a safe place to go, a timeout place to go. But they need to involve themselves in the family and have something to give to the family. Yeah. Like if they wash the dishes, they wash the dishes for the family.
Well, it gives you value.
Yeah.
And I gather that allows then somebody to commend you, praise you, approve you, affirm you.
Right.
Because you've contributed or you've done something noticeable or worthwhile.
Even if it's something like making cookies for the family. That's a very nurturing thing to do for the family. Okay, you're doing it for yourself because you want cookies too, but you're giving to the family.
Yeah.
So those are valuable tools for children to learn. They are a part of a society.
I gather if you develop a skill, in this case baking or helping cook or whatever, gives you value just by the fact you have a skill.
For sure.
Which you then can use on life, and it becomes perhaps a career.
It could be.
I mean, but it gives you something to at least look forward to and be able to do.
Right. Right.
So thrivers are very thriving is a very important aspect of parenting, isn't it?
It is.
To help that kid achieve.
Kids that have an attachment disorder don't try. But kids that thrive will take on the challenge. And it is a challenge. They may not make it, but they might, And in our society, we usually set it up that they do make it. But it's important for them to be challenged and see that they can do that and then take the next step and do another thing and so on. It's like walking up the stairs. Little by little, they get to the top.
So a parent that gets stuck in the parenting process early on and maybe doesn't do quite so well, if they really recommit to that child and really decide, okay, I'm going to be a parent that I really should have been and now need to be, that's hope for that kid.
Yeah.
There's hope there.
I want to just correct this one thing. It might be a parent that has not known how to parent, now wants to parent. That's true. But remember, these children grow up a certain way, and they act out a certain way. And you can't take that so personally, even though they may say it's personal to you. It really says so much about them. Like I said, it's like you were saying earlier, it's a red flag about them and how they feel about themselves. So it's not about you. So it's common for parents to think, I failed as a parent. Don't look at me as a parent. I'm not a good parent. It's really not that. And society needs to understand it's not that. It's a very delicate situation, very difficult to do. But they need to overcome that and realize it's not about them. It's something that the child needs.
But this is also the point that some of these kids don't have that sense of conscience, like we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
So they don't know how you feel. They don't know how they're really making you feel. They don't know what impact they have on you when they cuss at you.
Or they do.
Or they lie.
Or they do know, and they're just acting out how angry they are because back in the old days, they didn't get what they wanted, and they're still angry about that.
Yeah.
So they do know, and so if you're down, they want to kick you some more. That's how it feels. But remember, it's not about you. It's about how they feel.
Yeah, and you just confirm them, affirm them, and be able to support them and help them see the difference of what could be done, how you could have handled that, what you could have said,
Yeah.
rather than what you did, and then just move on.
Well, that, and you know what?
It's instructional.
It is instructional, and there's consequences to behavior. And they need to understand there's consequences to behavior. There's structure in their life, and everybody needs structure. Everybody needs structure in their life, and these children do too.
You know, that might be a point we can end on.
Okay.
I think it's a great point there. But let me just give you a tip for the day. And it really picks up for where we are on our discussion today. So this is your parenting tip for the day, okay? Believe there is deep inside a loving child that is good and kind and in need of your love and help. That's the belief.
That's right.
Believe in deep inside a loving child is there. And that child can be good and kind, but that child needs your help and needs your love as a parent. And that combination is really what puts these kids over the top.
That's right.
Anyway, thanks for joining me today on the Dr. Teach Me to Parent episode. And I would just like to invite you to join me on my podcast, which is every day, and it's available on the psychologyreport.buzzsprout.com. So let me say it one more time, and you can pick it up, okay? The psychologyreport.buzzsprout.com. So go to that on the internet and pick up my podcast. It's on all kinds of topics related to the healthy living and from a psychological point of view. So there it is on the screen. So just write that down and go pick it up. And there's about 200 topics there that you can now access on the archive. So I invite you to it. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of my program on television and the podcast, we include you on both of them. Let us know. We'd be glad to have you as one of our sponsors. You got quite a few of them, but we got room for you too. So come and be a sponsor, okay? Hey, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for Dr. Onesian joining us, and hope that you will find this discussion not only helpful, but that's something you can pass along to somebody else who might be in a situation where these kind of statements could be helpful. And you can pick it up now on YouTube if you'd like to access it at another time. So be available on YouTube, okay? Bye for now.
CentralValleyTalk.com